Guided Listening. I'm Jeff Antoniuk from Jazzwire. Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to be doing guided listening on one of my favorite players, one of my favorite groups, one of my favorite songs. This is the Joe Henderson Trio. This is Joe Henderson on tenor saxophone, Ron Carter on the bass, Al Foster on drums, and this is from Live at the Village Vanguard, a double album called State of the Tenor, Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is the song Beatrice, beautiful Sam Rivers tune. I became aware of this tune through the Joe Henderson performances. There's plenty of other performances, including, of course, Sam Rivers, but I think this song got on people's radar in the, late 80s, 90s, as Joe Henderson recorded it here and then had it on a bunch of his live albums as well. This trio is state-of-the-art trio. The playing from these folks are amazing, and it's not just some rhythm section that Joe Henderson's playing over. As you're going to hear right away, the nice thing about this instrumentation with no guitar or no piano is how much sonic space there is. There's way more space for Ron Carter to do things other than walking the bass, which is what a swing bass player does, right? Jazz bass player. There's so much more room than just dang, 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 and some drum fills on the drums. The whole double album is an absolute masterclass on how to play in a trio setting, especially for bass and drums. For the lead voice, it's different because there isn't all that harmonic information coming your way from piano and guitar. So that gives you also some latitude, but it also creates a responsibility because now we have to communicate some harmony some way or other to the audience, right? But none of us play a harmonic instrument. It's really interesting. So we'll dig into it. I don't want to say a ton more. We'll just listen to this. But this is one of my desert island. You know, if I got to take 5 albums somewhere, this is definitely one of them. Before we go on, I want to let you know on November 1st, 2025, which is coming up very soon, we're going to be launching the Jazzwire Summit workshop website. So it's www.jazzwiresummit.com. And we're opening registration for our 4 workshops in 2026. So we have Napa, our first annual Napa Valley Summit in March of 2026. We have Edmonton, Canada. That's at the end of June. We have the Twin Cities Summit, which is in mid-July, and then our flagship, the Washington, D.C. area Summer Summit at the end of July. So those are registrations opening up. The Napa Summit, people are really excited about it, as I am. We're almost 50% booked up, and we haven't even opened up registration. People have been asking us to save them spots. So on November 1st or soon after, jump over to the website, learn a little bit about these workshops for adult musicians. People come from all over the world to Canada and the United States to do these workshops with us. We'd love to have you there too. So yeah, check that out. Okay, so let's jump into this recording. The album is State of the Tenor. The song is Beatrice, and let's see what we see. Live at the Village Vanguard. So these beautiful double stops, chords, harmony from the acoustic bass from Ron Carter. And so that was interesting. A solo intro that did set up the time and the vibe of the tune. Al Foster, very lightly on brushes. Joe Henderson playing the melody. So listen to what Ron Carter's doing. He's playing half notes and whole notes. So the last 4 measures of the melody, which that was, has a little rhythmic signature that they played. But again, is Ron Carter walking the bass in 4? No, which is what most bass players would do if you gave them this song. So covering the role of bass and harmony in a really creative way. And this is something that wouldn't make sense to do if we had guitar or piano. Ah, cool. Okay, so bass solo first. 1, 2, 3, 4. very subtle drum accompaniment. And Ron's note choices, we can hear the chords, we can hear the harmony. The shape of his melody is being shaped by the chords, by the harmony, right? Nobody's providing the harmony is informing his melodies. So Ron Carter, I mean, obviously a legend, right? Fantastic soloing here. And so he's adding some chords because he can. We're hearing cymbals for the first time, which is very subtly, right? All right, short solo, Joe Henderson. So listen to the accompaniment. Is Ron walking the bass? Still hasn't walked the bass. We're 10 choruses in now, right? He's still playing in this 2-feel, half notes and whole notes. Whole notes. And again, really subtle drumming. But what are we starting to hear? A hi-hat. Little bits of hi-hat coming in. And that's the hi-hat, kicking the hi-hat, the cymbals against each other. Al Foster, with the control and the maturity of staying brushes on the snare drum, but now we're hearing improvising from the hi-hat. If you listen back and keep listening, we're going to hear more of the hi-hat in an improvising way from the drums. Right? Cymbals, but it's specifically the hi-hat, which is interesting. We'll talk about why. Ron Carter still has not walked the bass on this swing tune. That very typical Joe Henderson sort of language, using a lot of flurries, a lot of trills. So Joe's playing pretty energetically, right? Not necessarily loud, but a lot of texture and a lot of notes. And how the accompaniment is staying interestingly out of the way, or staying lower energy as Joe's being high energy. It's pretty cool. And did you feel that dial back at the end of Joe's solo, how as subtle as Ron Carter and Al Foster were being, it breathed even more. They got even more subtle for that moment. Masterful. Al Foster goes into a halftime feel there, which is pretty slick. So Al Foster never went to the cymbal. He never picked up sticks. Ron Carter never once swung, and this is like a medium swing tune, right? The two things that every bass player and drummer on earth would have done, their role, these guys didn't do. They found a different way to accompany. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what makes this so genius. Here's our little 3-bar tag at the end of the song. And again, that's hi-hat cymbals. Wow. I wish I would have been there. That would have been nice. All right. So I guarantee Al Foster had some drums. There were some toms. There were some floor toms. There was a bass drum. There were a bunch of cymbals. And so he chose to play almost none of them. That's hard to do. To have all this stuff around you and understand, like, I'm going to use this voice. You know, you're an actor. Maybe you can do 20 different cool accents. Guess what? This role doesn't count for 19 of them. Stop it, right? So that ability and how, interestingly, the hi-hat, the cymbals that come together, played by the left foot of a drummer, is typically, in 99 out of 100 drummers, that's the least improvisatory, historically the least improvising of all the stuff in a drum set. That's the part that stays on 2 and 4. So with Al Foster, the only improvising we heard in that whole take was the hi-hat. And he really just kept the time going in a very, smooth, not very interactive way on the snare drum. So that was a fascinating decision, right? And then we have Ron Carter never once walking the bass on a swing tune. And there were plenty of times he wasn't even in a 2-feel. He was in this other thing that, again, this stuff wouldn't have worked so well with the harmonic input of guitar or piano as 2 obvious harmony instruments, or the rhythmic input. That's a big thing to remember about comping. When we don't have those harmonic instruments, that's also rhythmic information that isn't there. So it really opens up the playing field. And for a less experienced player, it can be a hot mess. Playing trio like this, it's hard, it's terrifying, people are getting lost. It sounds really uncomfortable because we have important teammates not there, guitar and piano, right? So for folks like this, for absolute masters, they I was going to say finally, I'll say finally have the room to do what they can do. Al Foster, Ron Carter. And Joe plays with a lot of stuff going on. So to me, I love hearing Joe without a harmony player because he kind of doesn't need it. Like he's playing so much that he's covering that role to my ears. So I like hearing Joe. Like Joe has played with Chick Corea and with Wynton Kelly and with, Herbie Hancock and on, right? He's played with everybody, and that's all amazing stuff. But it's kind of nice to hear him without those strong voices behind him, so he can, really get into his strong voice. Can you tell I love this album? It's one of my all-time favorites. There's just no better example of just like the highest end communication and trio playing. And this is just one approach that these guys took. There's 20 other tunes on these couple albums, and you'll hear so much more from Al Foster, who was very subdued here. You'll hear so many approaches to rhythm and harmony and texture from Ron Carter. And you'll hear Joe Henderson being like in his prime on these recordings. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's a beautiful tune, but just the mechanics of a great trio like this with no harmony is kind of where it's at. So thank you for indulging me on that one. I had to talk about that tune. And yes, please visit jazzwiresummit.com. Get some information. You can reach out to us, of course, for more information. But probably a good time to start holding a spot for Napa Valley, for Edmonton, Canada, for the Twin Cities, for DC in 2026. Hope to see you there. All right, everybody, have a great week.